Have you ever felt completely lost when your kid throws a massive tantrum over losing a board game, or found yourself struggling to comfort them after their first major setback at school? We all want our children to grow up strong, confident, and resilient enough to handle life's inevitable storms. But today's world seems to only offer two extremes, hovering over them and creating hothouse flowers who can't cope, or being overly strict and risking breaking their spirit. What if I told you there's a third way, an ancient philosophy used by emperors and generals to maintain clarity amid the chaos of battle? This system is perfectly suited for raising children in the 21st century. In this video, we're going to reveal how the principles of Stoicism can transform you from an anxious parent into a wise mentor and turn your child into an emotionally resilient and thoughtful person. Ready to uncover secrets that have remained relevant for over 2 millennia? Let's dive in. Before we dive into the practical advice, let's dispel one massive myth. When people hear the word Stoic, they often picture a cold, emotionless person who suppresses every feeling. That couldn't be further from the truth. Stoicism isn't about lacking emotion. It's about mastering it. It's not about being a stone statue. It's about being a rock against which the waves of life's hardships crash, but that remains completely unshakable. This philosophy began in ancient Greece, but truly flourished in Rome. Its followers were incredibly diverse, from the slave Epictetus to the most powerful man in the world, Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who wrote his famous Meditations between military campaigns. They all shared one goal. They sought a practical tool for living, a way to maintain inner peace and act correctly no matter the external circumstances. And it is precisely this tool that we are going to adapt for the most important job in the world, raising our children. So, where do we begin? The cornerstone of Stoicism is the so-called dichotomy of control. It sounds complicated, but the core idea is surprisingly simple. Stoics essentially divide everything in the world into two categories: things we can control and things we cannot. The first category includes our thoughts, our judgments, our decisions, and our actions. The second category is virtually everything else: the weather, the actions of other people, our health, our reputation, or the outcomes of any competition. According to the Stoics, the main source of our suffering stems from the attempt to control the uncontrollable. Imagine this scenario. Your child studied hard for a test, but still came away with a poor grade. They are naturally upset, and that's completely understandable. But where do they focus their energy? On the grade itself, which is now fixed, or on what they can control? Analysing their errors, improving their study plan for next time, or perhaps asking for additional help. The task of the Stoic parent is to gently shift the child's focus away from the external result and back onto their internal effort. This is a fundamental shift that teaches true responsibility, replacing any feeling of helplessness. Let's look at a concrete example to understand this better. Say your daughter enters a school art contest and doesn't place. Her immediate reaction is tears and hurt. The judges were unfair. My drawing was clearly the best. What does the average parent do? They either join the child in criticising the judges, or they dismiss the situation entirely with something like, "Don't cry, it's only a competition." The Stoic approach is completely different. First, you validate her feelings. I understand why you're so disappointed. You put so much work into this. Then you introduce the concept of the dichotomy of control, using focused questions. Tell me, did we have any control over the judge's final decision? No. So what was in your power? Together, you figure out that what she could control was the choice of subject, the effort she put in, and the time she spent drawing. And that's exactly what you praise her for. You chose a difficult technique and didn't back down. You worked on this every night for a full week. I am incredibly proud of your diligence. This teaches the child to value the process and their own efforts, rather than just seeking external approval. This simple practice builds an inner strength, a core resilience that no single failure can ever break. Let's transition now to the next profound principle. The Stoics taught that the only true good is virtue, our character. Everything else, money, fame, health, material possessions, they labelled preferred indifference. These things might make life easier or more comfortable, but they do not determine whether a life is truly good or bad. So, how exactly do we apply this concept to parenting? Instead of praising a perfect grade, praise the underlying curiosity. Instead of celebrating winning a fight, celebrate the courage shown to defend the weak. Instead of rewarding good behaviour with an expensive toy, spend quality time with them, showing the value of relationships. Our culture is obsessed with the external attributes of success. Stoicism, however, teaches us to look much deeper. When a child understands that being kind, honest and brave is more important than popularity or having the newest gadget, they develop an immunity to many modern afflictions. Envy, consumerism, and the relentless chase for likes and validation. Your job, ultimately, is to ensure that virtue becomes the primary currency in your family. A simple example can illustrate this perfectly. Say your son comes home from school and brags that he cheated on a test and got an A. How do you react? You could simply punish him for cheating, but the Stoic approach goes deeper. Instead, you sit down and have a conversation. Look, I get that you really wanted a good grade, but let's take a minute and think. What really matters here? Is it that letter on your report card? Or is it the type of person you are becoming? When you cheated, you didn't just deceive your teacher, you deceived yourself. You robbed yourself of the chance to actually learn the material and get smarter. Honesty is like a muscle. If you don't work it out, it gets weak. The goal of this discussion isn't to shame him. It's to show that character and integrity are long-term investments in yourself, while a test grade is momentary and, frankly, insignificant. You're not just forbidding bad behaviour. You are actively explaining why it is good to be good. This is how you help form an internal moral compass, one that will guide him throughout his life, even when you aren't around to offer advice. Now let's discuss a technique that might sound counterintuitive, but it is incredibly powerful. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, often translated as the premeditation of evils. It sounds dark, even gloomy, but in reality, it is a potent tool for building resilience and inner strength. The essence of the technique is to intentionally imagine potential difficulties and setbacks in advance, not so you fall into a panic, but so you can prepare for them, both mentally and practically. This works wonderfully when applied to children. Before a big event, say a school performance or a recital, you might ask them, "What is the absolute worst thing that could happen?" A child might respond, "I'll forget my lines." Then you follow up. "And what happens next? Will people laugh?" Maybe. But more importantly, what can we do right now if you forget your lines? Together, you can create a plan. Look at the teacher, take a deep breath, smile and try starting the line again. By verbalizing the worst-case scenario, you strip it of its power. The fear of the unknown disappears, and the child realizes that even failure is manageable. This fundamentally transforms anxiety into preparation. A lot of parents shy away from this approach, worried it might instill pessimism in their children. But that is a common misconception. In reality, the opposite is true. This practice, known as premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils, is actually an inoculation against fragility. Modern positive psychology often pressures us to tell our kids, "You'll ace this, you're the greatest." This sets up unrealistic expectations, and when the child eventually faces reality, a reality where they aren't always number one and things don't always go their way, their world falls apart. The Stoic approach is far more honest and ultimately more effective. It tells them, you might face setbacks, you might fail, but that is not the end of the world. You have the inner strength to handle it. This method doesn't program kids for failure. It programs them for resilience. It teaches them not to fear falling, because they already have a plan for how they will stand back up. This builds not a fragile form of optimism, but a solid, reliable self-confidence that is independent of external circumstances, and that is one of the most valuable gifts you can ever give your child. The next Stoic principle has a beautiful, almost poetic ring to it, amor fati, or love of one's fate. This is the idea of not just resigning yourself to what happens, but embracing it with an open heart, seeing every event, even the negative ones, as an opportunity for growth. This is the peak of Stoic mastery, but its foundational elements can certainly be instilled in children. Of course, we shouldn't expect a child to genuinely love a broken leg or the devastating loss of their favourite team, but we can teach them to find something positive or useful in those moments. Broke a leg, look how much free time you suddenly have for reading books or learning programming. The team lost? That's a perfect chance to analyse mistakes and become stronger for the next match. The parent's job is to act as a translator of reality. We help the child reframe, "This is awful," into, "This is a challenge, and here is what it can teach me." This skill, the ability to find the silver lining even in the darkest clouds, is a genuine superpower for a happy life. Picture this scenario. You had planned a perfect day trip to the amusement park, but you wake up to a torrential downpour. Your child is in tears, and the day seems ruined. Your first instinct is likely to feel just as frustrated, but what does a Stoic parent do in that moment? They would hug the child, validate their disappointment, and then reframe the situation. They might say, "You're absolutely right. The rain has changed our plans. That's a fact we just can't control. But let's look at the opportunity this situation gives us instead. We can build the biggest pillow fort ever, have a marathon of our favourite movies complete with popcorn, or finally bake that special batch of cookies we never seem to find time for." You're not denying the problem exists, but you're refusing to let it derail your entire day. You demonstrate that happiness isn't the result of perfect circumstances, but rather the result of choosing our reaction to imperfect ones. By practicing amor fati, the love of fate, in these small moments, you teach your child to be the master of their circumstances, not the victim. You are teaching them the priceless art of turning lemons into lemonade. Closely related to the concept of amor fati is another famous Stoic principle, often summarized by the powerful phrase, "The obstacle is the way." What this means is that every difficulty we encounter isn't a barrier. It's an opportunity to practice a specific virtue: patience, courage, creativity, or persistence. This is an especially critical concept for children. Can't assemble a complicated building block set. Excellent. That's persistence training. Did they argue with a friend? That's their chance to learn forgiveness and negotiation skills. Is their homework boring? That's an opportunity to develop discipline. When a child starts seeing problems, not as punishment, but as workout equipment for their character, their whole outlook on life fundamentally shifts. They stop avoiding hardships and start seeing them as challenges to embrace. Your role as a parent is to illuminate these moments. Don't solve the problem for them. Instead, ask, which of your superpowers do you think this challenge will help you level up? This transforms the entire process of overcoming obstacles into an engaging game. Let's look at an example. Imagine your child is learning to ride a bike. They fall, get scraped up, start crying, and are ready to throw in the towel. The typical parent reaction is, "Hold on, let me help, I'll steady you." The result? The child eventually rides, but they haven't actually learned how to balance on their own. The Stoic approach, however, means saying, "Yes, falling hurts, but every single fall teaches your body exactly how to find balance. That scrape is a sign that you are getting braver. Look, you just rode 2 meters farther than you did last time." You are successfully shifting the focus from pain and failure to the process of learning and the development of courage. The obstacle, the fall, becomes an essential, even necessary part of the journey toward the goal. You could even treat those falls like badges of honor or bravery, counting them together. This method doesn't just help them learn to ride the bike faster, it instills a fundamental realization: growth is impossible without effort and mistakes, and that the biggest achievements always lie on the other side of the biggest difficulties. This prepares them not just for riding a bike, but for life itself. Now let's discuss the role of the parent. The most important principle of Stoic upbringing is leading by example. Children, especially young ones, learn not from what we say, but from what we do. You can give them 100 lectures on the dichotomy of control, but if you are personally yelling at the television when your favourite team loses, or completely panicking over a little juice spilled on the carpet, all your words will be meaningless. Your reaction to small daily annoyances is the clearest lesson in Stoicism your child will ever receive. Imagine you are stuck in traffic, running late for an important meeting. What is your response? Are you nervously honking and cursing at other drivers? Or do you calmly say, "We are in traffic. We cannot control this. So, what can we control? We can call ahead and let them know we will be late. And we can put on an audiobook and use this time productively." The child absorbs this model of behaviour. They learn that external events do not necessarily have to dictate our internal state. Being a Stoic role model doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It means being honest and transparent about your efforts. If you mess up, if you snap and yell at your child, it's vital to go back later and apologise. Say, "I'm sorry, I was wrong. I let my anger get the better of me when I could have reacted calmly. Let's talk together about how I might have handled that situation differently." This shows your child that self-mastery is a skill that takes a lifetime to develop, and that even grown-ups make mistakes sometimes. This builds an atmosphere of trust and mutual growth. Remember, your home is the training ground for Stoic virtues. Every broken cup, every sibling argument over a toy, every failure. These are all chances to demonstrate, through your actions, how to meet life's challenges with dignity, reason, and tranquility. Your children are watching you. The way you handle life will become their internal compass for years to come. Therefore, the core question a Stoic parent must ask is not, "How do I teach this to my child?" but rather, "How do I become this person myself?" The Stoics offer another practical tool, voluntary discomfort. The core idea is to consciously step outside your comfort zone occasionally, deliberately toughening up both mind and body. This practice makes us less reliant on modern conveniences and far more prepared to handle real hardship should it ever arise. Now, applying this to parenting, it definitely doesn't mean starving your kids or making them sleep on the floor. We're talking about microdoses of discomfort. For instance, you could suggest your child take a cool shower instead of a hot one, or walk a couple of blocks instead of hopping on the bus. Maybe they could try a completely new food they wouldn't normally touch. You might organise a no-gadget day, or plan a weekend camping trip where you sleep in a tent. Crucially, this must be presented as a conscious choice and framed as a game or a challenge, not as a punishment. The ultimate goal is to show the child they are far stronger and tougher than they realise. The lack of typical comfort isn't a disaster, it's just different circumstances. Imagine you're teaching a child to swim. You wouldn't keep them in the shallow end forever, right? At some point, you have to guide them into deeper water. Voluntary discomfort is essentially that same depth, applied to everyday life. When a child first takes a cool shower, they feel that initial shock, but it's quickly followed by a rush of energy and self-pride. When they walk that extra mile, they get tired, sure, but they learn exactly what their legs are capable of. These small victories over their own softness build self-confidence far more effectively than any praise ever could. They gain empirical knowledge. I can handle hard things. And when real, involuntary discomfort strikes their life, be it illness, failure, or loss, they will already have the inner resources needed to face it with dignity. They will know that discomfort is a temporary state, something they can endure, and something they can emerge from stronger. This is preparation for real life, not perpetual existence in a comfort zone. Now let's talk about emotions. As we've already established, the Stoics didn't advocate suppressing feelings. They urged us to analyse them. The core Stoic principle is that there is a critical gap between the event itself and our emotional reaction. And within that gap lies our judgment, our personal evaluation of the event. It's not the broken toy itself that truly upsets the child, but their internal judgment. This is awful. I'll never be happy again. The parent's job is to help the child recognize this gap and work on reshaping that judgment. There is an excellent technique for this called the pause. When you see your child starting to get angry or severely upset, you can step in and say, "Hold on, stop. Let's hit the pause button." Take 3 deep breaths. This simple physical break buys essential time for the rational mind to engage. After that moment of calm, you can ask guiding questions like, "What exactly are you feeling right now? Why do you think that way? Is there another way we could look at this situation?" You are teaching your child not simply to follow their first impulsive reaction, but to become an active explorer of their own emotions. Let's break this down with a practical example. Imagine the younger brother grabs the older one's toy without permission, and the older one is ready to absolutely explode with rage. Instead of shouting, "Stop that right now," you employ the Stoic approach. You calmly say, "I see you're really angry. That makes sense. He took your possession. Let's just pause for a moment and think this through." You lead the older child aside, giving him a chance to cool off and catch his breath. Then you ask, "Do you think he did that specifically to try and make you angry?" The older sibling will probably say, "Yes." You then continue, "But what other reasons might there be? Maybe he liked your car so much that he simply couldn't resist. Or maybe he's still too young to understand the concept of asking permission." You aren't excusing the younger brother's actions, but you are broadening the older child's worldview. You show him that his initial assumption, "He did this just to spite me," is only one possible narrative. This teaches both empathy and critical thinking. And most importantly, you equip the child with a lifelong tool for managing anger, the ability to stop, pause, and consciously choose their reaction. This principle, how we handle our judgments, is arguably the most crucial thing we can learn. As Epictetus famously said, "It is not events that disturb people, it is their interpretation of them." This is a golden rule that we absolutely must teach our children, tailored to their understanding. Imagine a child isn't invited to a classmate's birthday party. Their immediate first thought is, "Nobody likes me. I'm a failure." That single thought causes them immense pain. Your job is to help them separate the actual fact from their interpretation of it. The fact is, you were not invited to this specific party. The interpretation is, "Nobody loves me." You can sit with them and say, "Yes, that stings. That's painful. But let's truly think about this. Does this one single instance prove that absolutely nobody loves you? What about your friend Peter, who you were playing with just yesterday? What about Grandma, who is always thrilled to see you?" You are not dismissing their feelings, but you are directly challenging their catastrophic judgment. You are teaching them to be their own defense attorney, not their own prosecutor. This skill is the absolute bedrock of mental health. The ability to stop and not accept that first negative thought as absolute truth is a vital defense against both anxiety and depression. Another great example is how we handle mistakes. Culturally, we often view an error as a definite failure, something truly embarrassing or shameful. A child is afraid to raise their hand in class because they dread giving the wrong answer. They avoid trying new things altogether because they fear falling short or failing. The Stoic perspective on error, however, is completely different. A mistake isn't a failure. It's simply feedback. It's just crucial information showing you that you need to try a different approach. As a parent, you have the power to cultivate this mindset. When your child brings home a test or assignment filled with corrections, don't focus on the red ink. Instead, say, "Fantastic! Now you know exactly what you need to work on." Every mistake actually makes you smarter because it points you directly toward the right answer. You can share stories of great scientists who made thousands of errors before achieving their breakthrough. You can also talk openly about your own mistakes and explain what valuable lessons they taught you. This process changes the very perception of failure itself. It transforms it from something terrifying and shameful into a necessary and even valuable component of learning and growth. This approach genuinely frees your child, giving them the courage to experiment, take risks, and continually improve. Finally, let's talk about simplicity and the value of the present moment. The Stoics, even the wealthiest among them, like Seneca, embraced moderation and cherished the simple things in life. They understood that the pursuit of material possessions is an endless, joyless race. In a world where children are constantly bombarded by an avalanche of advertising and consumer culture, this lesson is vital. Teach children to value experiences over possessions. Instead of buying yet another expensive toy that will be forgotten in a week, go on a hike together, learn how to cook a new meal, or simply read a book. Teach them to find joy in the everyday, a walk through the woods, a meaningful conversation at dinner, or watching the clouds drift by. This ties closely into another Stoic practice, memento mori, the reminder to remember death. For children, this concept must be adapted carefully. The point isn't to frighten them, but to teach them the importance of cherishing the present. Frame it like this: let's truly enjoy this walk right now, because this exact moment will never happen again. This instills mindfulness and deep gratitude. So what does this look like in practice? For example, you might start a family tradition called Gratitude Night, where everyone shares 3 good things that happened to them during the day over dinner. These can be incredibly simple things. Dinner was delicious. I saw a beautiful butterfly. Or, we laughed together. This simple practice shifts the brain from looking for problems to seeking out reasons for joy. Alternatively, when your child asks for a new expensive item they saw a friend have, don't just say no. Instead, start a dialogue. Say something like, "I understand you really want that. Let's think about the joy it would bring you. Now, what else could bring you that same joy, but is something we can't buy with money?" This teaches the child to look inward and understand the true sources of their desires and their happiness. You are raising a person who finds satisfaction, not in the external world of possessions, but in the internal world of meaning, relationships, and experiences. It becomes impossible to truly make that person unhappy by taking away a toy or a gadget, because their happiness comes from within. So let's wrap things up. Stoic parenting isn't about following a strict rule book or trying to raise little emotionless philosophers. Instead, it's a complete framework, a practical toolkit that helps both parents and children live more meaningfully, peacefully, and happily in our complex and unpredictable world. The most important ideas to remember are distinguishing between what we can control and what we cannot, and focusing on our efforts rather than the outcome. It's the ability to view every obstacle not as a barrier, but as a path to developing character. And of course, it's understanding that it isn't events that make us miserable, but our judgments about those events. By integrating these principles into your family life, you're not just giving your child a set of instructions. You're providing them with a genuine operating system for life, one that will help them navigate any difficulty they encounter. You won't raise a fragile hothouse flower, but a strong tree capable of weathering any storm. Thank you for watching this video all the way through. If you found it helpful, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our future episodes. Now, I have a question for you. Which Stoic principle are you already using in your parenting, perhaps without even realizing it? Share your story in the comments below and let's discuss it together.